Welcome. This is the February 21, 2023 regular meeting for the Township Board for the, for the Charter Township of Meridian. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing afterwards. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I ask you to remain standing so that in solidarity with the rest of the MSU family, this board would like to ask you to join us in a moment of silence. Thank you. And to end this observance, we will have a rendition of the shadows. Mr. Lamaster, would you call the roll for us?
Supervisor.
Here?
Clerk Guthrie.
Here.
Treasurer DeShane. Trustee Hendrickson.
Yep.
Trustee Sundland.
Here.
Trustee Wilson.
Here.
Trustee Wazinski.
Here.
All present.
Thank you. Item 6B, item 6 on our agenda is presentations. We have several tonight. And we will start with a presentation by Chief Plaga and Chief Hamill in response to questions about how Meridian Township responded to the events at Michigan State.
Madam Supervisor, board members, thank you. We had an entire shift respond to the university. There were 3 of the first 7 on scene were Meridian Township employees. They were police officers that worked for Meridian Township. I received the call. I can tell you where I was at. I was on Marsh Road northbound at Lake Lansing when I heard that call go out. And several other officers responded to the station. There were 20 in all that responded in some way, shape, or form. 4 of our tactical team members were there. We had officers first on scene at the Union. Also, we had them at Brickey Hall. One of our officers assisted in evacuating the victim from the Union and trying to get them to medical attention. I know that Chief Hamill had several folks on scene. I'll let him speak to their response.
Yeah, Madam Supervisor and Board, thank you. So I was ironically at a meeting as well in Meridian Township, and Chief Campbell tried to call me right after the page came out. I texted him, I'll call you in 5, and then I looked at my active 911 and saw a shooting, of which I jumped up and went out and called him, and he explained to me what happened. So my first instinct was to call my daughter, because she goes to school there. She was good. Our entire shift responded with the exception of 1 rig. So we had 3 ambulances in our truck and Battalion Chief Campbell. We ended up with his staff, a couple of our staff, interior, extracting the victims, and we transported 3 to Sparrow. So after that, Chief Campbell and myself and Battalion Chief Kunter from East Lansing went to the command post and helped set up unified command. At that point, we just spent a lot of time trying to figure out our needs, our resources, and we ended up actually getting an additional 27 ambulances from Washtenaw County and Oakland County, just because we didn't know what was going to happen next. It took 3 hours to find the individual. So if you were listening to the scanner, there were shots fired every 2 seconds, it seemed like. And so we were really worried about not having enough ambulances. And we had 18 of our own in the metro area that were there and from a couple counties. So really, unified command was one thing that we learned from the Okemos response. And with Chief Paga doing his after action that day, I believe it really helped us cultivate a good response and teamwork from, I don't know how many hundreds of police officers were there?
Close to 500.
Very hard to manage that, almost impossible. I can't tell you how many firefighters ultimately we had there, but it was a lot. So best case scenario, we responded right away, and I believe every patient that was transported to Sparrow was there. Call came in 8:20, they were there probably by 8:45, 8:50 at the latest. So we ended up having a lot of people come in on recall and basically respond to the rest of the township. And NISA came in and actually put an ambulance in the township to help us with that. And so we didn't miss any other calls because we had a couple bad accidents and some other things, so we were able to maintain that. So ultimately, I think with what they did, what police did, what fire did, it was a well-organized outing. Not what we wanted, not what we like. We're going to learn from it and continue on, and we just pray for all the families. So.
Questions?
Board members, you have questions or comments you'd like to make at this time? Well, just let me say thank you all very much for doing your jobs and the way you do your jobs.
Thank you, ma'am.
And thank you for reporting to us. Item B on 6B is the introduction of 2 new full-time EMT firefighters. Chief Hamel.
All right. So Andrew's the only one that was able to make it tonight. Zachary Silver was not able to make it. He had something come up. I'll just talk about Zachary real quick, and then we'll talk about Andrew, and he can. I forgot to explain the process. We're preoccupied. So let's see. Zachary comes to us from the Brighton area. He worked for Brighton Fire Department. We hired him as an EMT firefighter. And since hiring him, he actually has already passed his National Registry EMT paramedic written test and practical. He just passed his practical, I think, Friday. So we're excited now to get him going as a paramedic and move on to that. He actually worked in Brighton and Livingston County, and he comes with a tremendous amount of experience, and we're really excited to have him. So I'll try to figure out how to get him to meet you guys at another time.
Okay.
And then there's Andrew. Same thing. Andrew, we hired as an EMT firefighter. He has since passed his written test, and he takes his practical this week, right?
This Friday.
This Friday. And so we'll keep our fingers crossed, and then we'll move him up to a paramedic. He's from Battle Creek. He took his paramedic program at Kellogg Community College and has, again, a tremendous amount of experience, worked for the Veterans Affairs Fire Department, and has a tremendous amount of knowledge and experience. And we're just really, really happy to have Andrew and Zach join our team. And we've been lucky to find some really good people without any long-term vacancies, and it's really just helped a lot. So I'll let you say thank you.
Go to each person.
Pardon me?
Just go to each person.
Say your thank you.
All right. Well, thanks, guys. Kind of winging this right now because it kind of shows me the spotlight. But thanks, guys. Looking forward to working with you guys and being part of the Meridian Township community.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Great to have you. Nice to see you.
Welcome, thank you.
Welcome aboard. Hi, welcome. That's okay.
Welcome, congratulations.
We're glad you're here.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you all, gentlemen. Item 6C on our agenda is a review or update on the MSU to Lake Lansing Trail presented by Deputy Manager Opsimer.
Good evening, Supervisor Jackson and board members. Pleased to be before you this evening to give you an update on the MSU to Lake Lansing Trail. Specifically tonight, we're going to be talking about the construction of phases 1 and 2. So after many years of hard work to acquire the land, the necessary funding, including federal funding, county parks and trail millage funding, as well as our local match funding, and to design the trail to put it out to bid, I am happy to announce the construction phases for 1 and 2. Phases 1 and 2 are projected to be completed by the end of the year. Users will then have a safe and enjoyable option for non-motorized travel from MSU's campus to Lake Lansing Park South. Phase 3, which will be constructed at a future year, will then provide non-motorized options for traveling to Lake Lansing Park North. So at the conclusion of this year, we hope that everyone will be able to actually navigate from the MSU campus to Lake Lansing South. And so this is a color-coded map. The blue lines that you see is phase 1. So this is the phase 1 route right here. Here's MSU campus. Here's Hagedorn Road. Here is Grand River Avenue. And so phase 1 begins, and there's an RRFB, one of those flashing beacons like we have on Kinawa and several other places in the township, the interurban crossing on Okemos Road. We've already installed the flashing beacon right there at Shaw and Hagedorn. And phase one will take you over the Red Cedar, along the banks of the Red Cedar, along the CN Railroad track to the Park Lake Grand River intersection. The yellow phases of this map are the existing constructed pathways and trails. Phase two is here in green. It's a little bit more difficult to see that line on this map, but I do have some zoomed in slides later on. And then, of course, we have the existing interurban and the existing phase 2B, which was constructed in 2021. And Lake Lansing Park South is up here. So that yellow, green, and blue route is essentially the route that non-motorized pedestrians and bicyclists will be able to take at the conclusion of 23. So some facts on phase one. It is approximately 1 mile long. And again, it starts at Hagedorn and Shaw, and it concludes at Grand River and Park Lake. It includes the pedestrian bridge, which will very closely resemble the pedestrian bridge on Okemos Road, adjacent to the new Camelback Bridge that is being constructed. And again, this trail will take users over the Red Cedar behind the MSU Community Music School, and then along the banks of the Red Cedar and the CN Railroad tracks. So here's a zoomed in portion of the phase one trail. One question that I often get is, how do you get from phase one to phase two? There's actually two options. The first option is to cross Hagedorn or Grand River Avenue using the signalized intersection here, and then take the existing pathway on the north side of Grand River Avenue to phase two. Or you can just proceed right here, and then right here at Campus Hill Drive and Grand River Avenue is where the new pedestrian island will be installed as part of the Grand River Avenue project this year. And actually, if you're familiar with Campus Hill Drive, it's a boulevarded drive. The eastern drive will be, the existing eastern drive will be the trailhead right there. So we will reconfigure that curb, and you'll actually be traveling up the existing eastern asphalt driveway there. Photo of phase one construction. You can see the riverbank right here to your right. Another photo of phase one construction. So construction began in December, and we hope that phase one construction will conclude in July to September of this year. The estimated cost is $3.37 million. We did obtain a $1.7 million federal TAP grant for phase one. The remaining portion of the project will be funded by the Ingham County Trails and Parks millage and the Township Pathway millage as the matching funds for the county funds. And again, construction schedule, anticipated completion July to September of this year. Phase two. So phase two is slightly longer, 1.2 miles. No pedestrian bridge, far fewer boardwalks, so the construction is easier. We just received the bids on phase two and are working to schedule the pre-construction meeting. And again, this will take motorists from Campus Hill Drive essentially to Gaylord C. Smith Court, where our service center is located, and Okemos Road, at which point there will be another RRFB or flashing beacon for that crossing on Okemos Road. So here's a zoomed in portion of the phase two. And you can see that it's predominantly being constructed on DTN's Campus Hill property, and then the Meridian Uplands, so land preservation property. So for this phase, we had minimal land acquisition compared to phase one. Funding of phase two, so phase two, not including phase 2B costs, but just phase two, will cost approximately $382,000 to construct. And this is being funded by the Ingham County Trails and Parks millage and then our matching grant. And again, construction schedule for this, we are looking at the end of 2023. We're hoping maybe November, early December, this will be wrapped up. And so this is one of the photos of a portion of the trail route for phase two through our land preservation property. So phase 2B, if you recall, this was the widening of the existing pathway on the east side of Okemos Road. from where Phase 2 will connect at Gaylord C. Smith Court up to the existing interurban trail. And so we widened this to a 10-foot wide pathway in 2021. There's a zoomed-in portion of the Phase 2B portion of the project, right here. Here's a picture of the construction in 2021. There's a picture I took this morning of the completed project. Then the interurban trail, users will then make a right-hand turn onto the interurban and take this portion as 1.1 miles, and that will take you to Marsh Road, just south of Hazlitt Road. Picture of the interurban trail. And so again, at the end of 2023, users can use the existing pathway system and the signalized intersection at Hazlitt and Marsh to make that connection to the final phase that we'll talk about, which is the Shaw Street connector. This was also constructed in 2021 as part of the drain project and reconstruction of all the roads. So we did install and widen the existing sidewalk on Shaw Street. And so we have the 10-foot wide pathway that brings non-motorized users up to the Lake Lansing Park South entrance. There's a photo of the Shaw Street connector. So you can see in portions of the Shaw Street connector, we were simply widening the system, and other portions we were constructing the entire portion of the sidewalk. And there is a zoomed in portion of the Shaw Street connector phase, again, constructed in 2021. Phase 3, the township also recently announced that we will begin working on the design and engineering phase of Phase 3 in 2023. We would hope to complete that design and engineering sometime in 2024 and put the project out to bid, hopefully for construction in 2025. And there is a zoomed in portion of the Phase 3 route. So it ends essentially in the northeast corner of the township, near where the CN Railroad tracks cross Green Road. So, and once we have completed all 3 phases of the remaining portions of the trail, users will then have approximately 6.7 miles of trail system that they can enjoy as part of the MSU to Lake Lansing Trail. Happy to answer any questions that you have this evening.
Mr. Hendrickson.
Madam Supervisor. So the end of the Phase 3 trail, you said, was located at the crossing of, or relatively close to the crossing of Green and the CN track. What is is that going to be like a trail head? What would that look like exactly?
So we haven't designed this trail, so we're not specifically certain, but the reason to take the trail this far northeastwardly is because the county will be putting in a new trail roughly about right here. It's shown on our pathway master plan, if you pull up our pathway master plan on the website. So you'll be able to take a trail off of Phase 3 and into the existing trails that comprise Lake Lansing Park North. One trouble, and I'm gonna forget exactly why it was, but bicycles are not allowed in the Lake Lansing Park North trail system, and that had to do with the land acquisition. So that land was acquired from the adjacent neighborhood, and as part of it, I believe there was a deed restriction or a restricted covenant or some other instrument that required that it be pedestrian-only trails in the park system. So that is the one caveat. So we're aware of that. We may do like bicycle parking at that trailhead so that people have a place to put their bike.
Thank you.
Other questions? Mr. DeShane.
Just to reiterate, so by the end of 2023, we will have our MSU to Lake Lansing bike path finished.
Not the entirety of it. Phase 3, this orange portion, will
Yes.
not be finished. But you will be able to take the trail route from Lake Lansing Park South using the yellow, green, and blue sections here. Blue and green are what we are constructing this year.
Phase 3 is kind of a surprise to me. I was expecting just to see to dead end at Lake Lansing Park South. And so the extra up to Green Road is an add-on to it, but it's really great news that we're going to have this path done by the end of this year with the extension done next year.
There's a lack of public knowledge about the project, and so we've made a concerted effort. We recently put this together in early February and issued a press release to really try to give residents a detailed overview and look at what the experience would be. We also, thanks to our communications manager, Sam Deal, we have drone footage of the Phase 1 trail route, and so we're still going through and reviewing that, but we'll be releasing some fun social media content with that Phase 1 route. And then, of course, after construction, we will get footage of the same trail route post-construction, so we can do a side-by-side, a before and after. We can do a lot of fun things with that imagery. And we'll be doing drone footage of Phase 2 as well.
And based on the popularity of the interurban, there's no reason to believe this won't be wildly popular with our residents.
I met with President Stanley before he departed MSU, and he was very excited about this trail. There's going to be a ton of excitement about this. So we're certainly going to work on increasing awareness and understanding of the trail system. Like I said, the number one question I get is right here. How do you get from Grand River and Park Lake to Campus Hill and Grand River? That's been the big dot that people really need connected. The other thing to keep in mind, I almost put a photo of one of these signs in there, but when you see the big dark blue signs, the wayfinding signs for trails, that is a county project. So the county holds a contract with Spicer Group for those signs, but we will have signs installed post-construction. But that's something that we have to work on with the county.
Okay, thank you very much.
Absolutely, thank you.
6D is an update on the Township Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Program. Director Titoff.
Good evening, Madam Supervisor and Board. It's great to see everybody. I'm glad that we could be together. I am going to just give you a quick overview of what's happening in DEI here at the Township. We had our task force met in January. We have been hashing out our plan, which is intended to be a framework that all of the township uses to make sure that we are doing right by all of our staff and in how we serve our community. Our mission statement remains, as Trustee Wazinski, I think, helped us come up with in 2021, which is to promote and support a diverse, equitable, and inclusive workforce through training, evaluation, and action. So with that, we have developed purpose and guiding principles. We were intending to have another meeting, but then things have been, as you know, pretty tumultuous. So we're still working out the specific details of the actual plan itself, but we do have the framework. And the good news about that is that we are working it out so that we have a way to assess ourselves. We establish our quarterly training for staff and leadership. And it also will affect how we relate to our community. It all works together. We are a village. Some of the guiding principles that we talked about in our January meeting were inclusivity, diversity, equity, collaboration, reflection, and data-driven decision-making. And I think we did talk about it previously about working with the SMART process, where we have something specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-bound. So we work with that in mind in every meeting. So together we have our, for 2023, as you already know, we have our Celebrate Meridian. We have that coming up in June. We have our Juneteenth celebration for the weekend of the 16th, and we will have some internal and external celebrations that tie to that event. And as you also know, thank you, Board, you have approved our Juneteenth as a holiday that we are able to observe as employees. And then, last but not least, we are having our first Pride celebration And we are looking at that for August of this year. We've got our planning committee, and we are looking forward to having another, I think this will be our second meeting on Friday. So that'll be a stellar step in a positive direction. We're really looking forward to it. So with our DEI plan overview, we're still working on the specifics of the framework, but as you know, we have the intention of follow through with our quarterly meetings, our quarterly trainings for our staff. And the intent really behind all of it is to continue to promote our connection. So I'm incredibly grateful. We are so fortunate, and I have a unique viewpoint from being in human resources because I work with all of our departments. So I get to see everybody in their work, in their zone, doing amazing things. And the positive impact is perpetual, and it's amazing to be part of. So what we are still working on, and we do every year, is just a part of who we are. We celebrate our people, our staff for their strengths. We have employee events. We will continue to do that. And Frank, Manager Walsh, has been stellar in leading those. It's absolutely a part of his wiring that it must happen, that we celebrate our staff and appreciate them. Through employee events, just to de-stress and have fun. And I don't know if you've heard about the holiday party, but we had a pretty serious competition with some trivia, and people were really into it. And it's just a lovely way to just change the channel for a minute and just connect as people. So we have our employee events, annual picnic, other employee appreciation events, luncheons, just impromptu lunches when we can, when the weather is marvelous. I mean, who knows what this week holds. And then our holiday party, and we work on township gear too. I think that staff seem to appreciate that. I see quite a bit of it around. Focusing on well-being and health. I think our staff know, and we've been trying to communicate it, and I always have stuff in HR, but we have an employee assistance program that really, it was a great opportunity to provide support to the people who support our community. So we did a special type of critical incident debriefing for all of our first responders, and we got to that as quickly as we could in the moment. So my understanding is that those went well. For policy and procedures, we are working through all language in all of our township documents. We've got, we just finished 4 of our contracts last year, went through all of the contracts and read them word for word and replaced anything that's got something gender specific with something gender non-specific, just so that we're starting to be more mindful of who is reading our documents and who is part of those documents. And that will apply across the board, contracts, personnel, training policies, anything at all. So that will have a DEI lens. I think some of the other things, we have our ADA process that we put in for meetings to make sure that we're doing right by the folks who need to participate in a different way while still adhering to the Open Meetings Act. And then we have our sanitary product dispensers that were put in. And I think that's going very well. We've had lots of positive feedback and folks who do appreciate and use said products. And that's kind of the overview, really. It's just the connectedness and making sure that we're checking in with ourselves and making sure that we plan ahead and we have things measurable that we can talk with you about. So if you have questions, let me know.
Questions, comments? Thank you. Abby? And our final presentation is 6E, the 2022 Meridian Township Annual Report. Mr. Walsh, Manager Walsh.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And before I give a very brief summary, and I mean very brief, I just got contacted by Dr. Lilly, Janet Lilly, who's Vice President of Governmental Affairs at Michigan State. I'm sure most of you know Dr. Lilly, but on behalf of the university, she expressed her deep appreciation for the very moving way you started the meeting. So I wanted to pass that along to the board. So thank you for that. I'm going to be very brief tonight because this started 15 months ago, when the board started planning 2022 in November, December of 21. Plan 22, as you know, we accomplished, as a team, accomplished a lot in 22. It's clearly delineated in this 2022 annual report. It's been out for a couple of weeks now. It's available on our website. It's available at the libraries. And we also covered it in front of our board and commissioner meeting that we had in this room last month. So we presented it to the public. I just want to remind everyone that it is available. I don't plan to go through any of it tonight because we've done that, and it's available for anyone who wishes to take a look at it. But thank you for all your work, and especially for honoring our neighbors and friends at the university. Thank you.
Thank you. We come to item 7, where we have citizens address agenda items and non-agenda items. I have 2 green cards here tonight. The first is from Rex Harrington. You will give us your name and address.
RX Harrington, 820 Piper Road, Hazlet. And I've come to comment on the presentation you had 2 sessions ago by a man who was talking about the Red Cedar River, how the Red Cedar River was clogged with log jams, and that if these were cleared away, that it would be a very fine recreational asset for the township. And this runs right through the middle of Meridian Township, and yet is unusable. So I'd like to support that notion, and there were 2 questions from the board, and I'd like to answer them. The first question was whether the log jams would reform if they were taken away at this time. Why wouldn't they reform when new trees fell into the water or washed into the water? And the answer to that question, I believe, and this is a theory more than it is an experience, is that I did canoe that trip from Meridian Road and Grand River down to Okemos Road. And so I saw and went through all the log jams, and it was just about like a session of Survivor to get through them. But at the bottom of each of those log jams, there seems to be an anchor log or something deeply buried in the sand. And that's probably been there for decades. And this log doesn't move when the storms come through and the other logs pile up against it. So my thought was that instead of just removing the upper logs, you have to pull out these anchor logs. And to pull those anchor logs out is not something I know that's been done or how it's done. But there's probably a machine to do it. Obviously, you can't use ground-based or tire-based machinery because it's all in the wilderness. So you have to bring something in either on a barge or you'll have to invent something. But these anchor logs, when they're pulled up, I think that we can manage the logs that wash into the river after that with just a standard crew, chainsaw and float them out. So that would be the first thing I would say. The second question was about the cost. And that cost would depend a lot on how these anchor logs are pulled up. But my feeling is that the rivers are assets of Michigan. And as that there are the assets of Michigan, then it's the responsibility of the government of Michigan, the state government, to handle this project. And so I would encourage the board to write letter to our Representative Julie Brixey, our Representative Penelope Ternaglu, and Senator Sam Singh. So why not write that letter, and we'll have that project done.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that advice, Mr. Harrington. Our second green card is from Representative Julie Brixey, a longtime friend of this board, and maybe she'll give us some insight on Mr. Harrington's suggestion.
I didn't come here to talk about log jams. Like Chief Plaga, last week I was at the Okemos School Board meeting attending the debriefing that the police department and the other agencies gave from their response to the swatting episode that had occurred. And I was updating the school board on legislation that we had introduced the week before regarding the school safety package that we had worked on last year in the wake of the Oxford shootings. Like Chief Plaga, I left that meeting and found myself not long afterwards going over, and I spent the evening with the East Lansing Police Department. And you know, while our community has been reeling and grieving from the loss of the three wonderful people and the tragedy of the 5 others who are still hospitalized, the thousands of students and staff members who were traumatized by the events, you know, while we've been grieving that, I do want to take a moment to echo the thank you that the board has passed along to the first responders. We had the opportunity last week to thank some of them on the House floor, but having been on the Township Board for 18 years before going to the legislature and working hand in hand with both the police and fire departments, you know, I fully understand the impacts that these types of events have on our people. We expect the first responders to go in there and do their jobs and put their lives in danger, which they did. But we should also recognize that they're human beings. Many of them are parents, and the aftermath can't be easy for any of them. So, again, thank you, both of you chiefs, and please pass that along to all of your folks. I know it's been tough on everybody. So today, I am not wearing green. I'm wearing red. And our clerk is a member of Moms Demand Action and has come and visited me in office hours multiple times. And so I thought, for her sake, and because of the resolution that you have tonight that you were going to be voting on, I thought I would wear red in honor of Mom's Demand. I too am a mom, and several of my kids attended MSU. So the school safety task force update I have is that we introduced about a 12-bill package a week ago Friday, and it kind of streamlines and makes uniform what schools should be doing with their active shooter drills. And the purpose of this is so that all of the police departments and first responders throughout the state, they all have kind of a similar methodology in response because, you know, as we saw last week and the week before, multiple jurisdictions participate in these types of events. So there were a number of bills speaking to the uniformity of those types of plans and drills. They also address some standardizing definitions that are important for the school board, you know, definitions of school safety terms and definitions behind the OK to Say program that the schools are using. And the bills also give guidance and specifics to timelines and handling of reports that come in from kids or from members of the public about potential threats. In addition to the school safety package, last week the Senate introduced an 11-bill package and the House will be introducing it tomorrow. And that includes several bills on universal background checks, a number of bills on extreme risk protection orders, which are sometimes called red flag laws. And those laws allow weapons to be removed from someone's home if they are a threat to themselves or to other people. I think it's important for folks to remember that 60% of deaths from firearms are by suicide, and these extreme risk protection orders have the ability to really make a measurable impact on reducing some of those numbers. The third bucket of bills is safe storage laws, and there's, I think, 3 different bills in that package that make specifics. In addition to those packages that the Senate introduced and will be introducing in the House, and we will be having joint hearings starting Thursday, joint Senate and House hearings for these reform bills. In addition to that, I'm also introducing a bill package that would ban guns from the Capitol building and the grounds, as well as the state office buildings that are around. And, you know, one of the reasons for that we've heard from so many people is that the Capitol is the people's house. And we receive a lot of visitors every year at the Capitol, about 1 million visitors, and the vast majority of them are children. So this is something that we have been receiving a lot of calls about the entire time I've been in the legislature, to make it safer for our children, and that, you know, one of our duties as elected officials is to look out for people and protect the health, safety, and welfare of folks. And children are people that definitely need and deserve protecting. So that is my update for you on those bills. And I, again, appreciate your advocacy and look forward to perhaps coming back and giving you an update on what we pass. And if anyone had any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Are there questions you'd like to ask at this time? Not just yet, Judy. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes.
We now come to item 8 on our agenda, which is the Township Manager's Report. Mr. Walsh.
Thank you, Madam Supervisor and Board. Again, I'll be brief. I know you've got a lot of issues ahead of you tonight. I just want to talk about one item, and that's the renovation of this building, and start getting that information, continue to get that information out to the public, because we're only here to serve. And in order to serve the public in the best way we can, people need to know what's happening. I want to take you back to 2014, February. I think it was around the 13th, where we closed the Central Fire Station on Clinton Street. And we closed it because of the poor condition it was in. The firefighters should have been out of there 10 years before that. It was in very, very poor condition. I believe the clerk's aunt and uncle live right across the street from there. So we closed that building back then and we made a makeshift station, which was better off than where our firefighters and paramedics were before. And so that decision, fast forward to now, we're trying to protect our assets and invest in our buildings. And if you walk around this building, most of this building is 50 years old. Actually, this is the only part of the building that's been renovated. So when you look around in this room, you think, well, this building's pretty nice, but you should take a walk around the building and see the wallpaper that's coming off, and the carpet, and the equipment of the office furniture is from the 70s. So it's time to reinvest in our building. We've been setting aside, as you know, cash for a number of years to do this. We're prepared to do it this year. So it looks like we're going to begin in mid-April moving out of this building. This room here, the town hall room, will remain open throughout the course of the renovation. It will remain open, so citizens who come here to be served, by this building or had in this building will continue to be served. We'll access through this door over here, and in here will be the entire treasurer's office. So we'll be able to still take bills just like we take bills now. People will be able to pay their invoices, get information. But in addition to that, we'll have 4 other departments in here with 1 person each, and that would be assessing and building and planning and engineering, and we'll spread those folks out in here as best we can. We'll still be able to have our meetings in here best we can, but this will start about mid-April and go till October 1st. The rest of the building will be spread out, rest of the staff, 53 of us, will be spread out into 3 different buildings. And that'll be down, one, we'll put 19 people down at the 242, next to the 242 church building on Bennett Road near the Bennett Woods Elementary. We'll be moving some departments down there. I won't go through them all tonight because we'll be communicating this to the public. And then we'll be putting 12 of our team members over across the street in the police department. And then another 9 or 10 over at the service center. 3 of our members will stay in the building and they'll work out of the studio, the communications department, because they have an ingress egress that doesn't take them through the building. We're going to try that. So that's where the 53 people, 53 team members will be relocated April 17th to about October 1st. It'll be a replacement, it'll be a painting of the walls. It'll be new carpeting and new office furniture. Those are the only 3 components we're looking at. There will be areas of the building, such as the restrooms and other areas that we don't get to with this remodeling, but we're staying within budget, we're paying cash for it, and we're taking care of a building that's been basically in this condition for 50 years. The only part that's newer is the far south end of the building in the communications wing, which was built, I believe, in 90 or 92. So I just wanted to start getting this out there. This project is coming forward, and we'll be vacating this building from April 17th roughly until October 1st. And much more information on this, and we will be sending a letter directly to our residents letting them know. But the most important thing is this room will remain open, and we'll be able to serve most everyone that comes in this room right here. So thank you. I know there'll be lots of opportunities for questions and information. I know this is not new news to you, but I want to start getting this information out to the public. So thank you very much, and good luck with your issues the rest of the evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 9 is board member reports of activities and announcements. Treasurer DeShane.
Thank you. I'll also be quick today. On February 10th, I attended the MABA meeting at the invitation of Director Clark, who had several members of the M team there to talk to the Meridian Area Business Association. It was a very good meeting. We got to tell them about all the things we do here in Meridian Township, many of them helpful to our local businesses. February 14th was the Senior Community Center Task Force meeting, which met for the first time, and it was a good first meeting. We're in the process of collecting data. We'll be doing very likely be doing some site visits of other senior and community centers throughout the state. And the 15th was the CATA board meeting, and I attended with our newest Meridian Township board member, Phyllis Vaughn, who we appointed at the last meeting and was sworn in time to attend her first meeting. Taxes were due on February 14th, a week ago today. And I'm happy to report 97% plus of all the residents paid on time. That's where the 3% who haven't yet paid, well, one is down to 2% today, a week later, but they've got another, they have until the 28th, a week from today, to pay their taxes here at the township. As of March 1st, they'll need to go to the Ingham County Treasurer to pay their taxes. That's state law. So I encourage people to come in and pay that balance off before it goes to the county treasurer, because there are additional fines and penalties added on to it when it goes to the county treasurer. That's my report. Thank you.
All right. Anyone else? Trustee Wilson.
Thank you, Madam Supervisor. I attended the CRC, the Community Resource Commission meeting on February 8th. There was discussion about spreading the word more thoroughly throughout the community about the aspects of Meridian Cares, which is our program that assists low-income individuals or people in an emergency with rent, utilities, and bus passes. So that was a productive meeting. I also attended the task force looking at the possibility of building a community and senior center in this community. We had our very first meeting. I was there with Supervisor Jackson and Treasurer DeShane, who is part of the group. And we had a productive discussion just talking about the visioning of what this could look like in our community. So I'll be chairing that in the future, this particular task force, and I'm really excited to see what we can bring forward to the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Then we'll move on to approval of the agenda. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda? Trustee Wazinski.
To approve the agenda as presented. Support.
Supported by Trustee Wilson. All in favor of the motion, please say yes.
Yes.
Opposed, no. And we'll move on now to, the agenda is approved. We'll move on now to the consent agenda. In the consent agenda are typical communications minutes of the February 7, 2023 regular Township Board meeting, bills, and a letter, authorization of a letter to the FAA in support of American Airlines at the local airport. Mr. Hendrickson.
Thank you, Madam Supervisor. I move the consent agenda as presented this evening.
Support.
Support, I believe this time by Mr. DeShane. There any comments? Then we need a roll call vote, Mr. Lemaster, for the consent agenda.
Supervisor Jackson,
Yes.
Clerk Guthrie,
Yes.
Treasurer DeShane,
Yes.
Trustee Hendrickson,
Yes.
Trustee Sundland,
Yes.
Trustee Wilson,
Yes.
Trustee Wazinski.
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0.
Thank you. With no questions for the attorney, we have a public hearing tonight. Item 13, a public hearing is on the Hazlet Village Square Commercial Rehabilitation Exemption Application. Director Clark.
Good evening, members of the board. Yes, the item before you tonight is the public hearing related to the commercial rehabilitation exemption application. So we've received an application from the developers SP Holding for 1655, 1621 Hazlet Road. This is going to mimic everything that we did in September of last year. The reason why we did not submit this ERA application was they were not the property owners. So submitting the application to the STC, we've called them, we've emailed them over and over and over again. It is a process, much like other tax exempting, where they're going to exempt for the full year. So as long as we submit our application within 23 before October 31st, the exemption should hit in time for 2021. So it begin January 1st, 2024. So the exemption application is going to exempt, provide a tax abatement for 10 years beginning December 31st of this year and ending December 30th, 2033, which is just crazy for me to be thinking about. But yes, so 10 years, we get that exemption. So much of the request before the board tonight is exactly the same as what we did in September. The project is the same, the developers are the same. The reason why we did not bring it forward before is because they were not the property owners.
Okay. At this time, I think I need to open the public hearing for comments about this proposal. Are there members of the public who would like to speak either in support or in opposition to the proposal described by Director Clark? All right, well, seeing none, I guess we can close our public hearing and move on.
This is on for discussion, so I'll be back.
Thank you. Item 14 are our action items. The first 14A is ordinance 2023-01, which is a rezoning of 1642 Lake Court from RB to RCC with a conditional rezoning agreement. And we're here tonight for an introduction.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Schmidt.
Thank you, Madam
Director
Supervisor.
Schmidt.
The request in front of you this evening is, again, the request is to rezone the approximately 0.7 acres of land between Lake Lansing and Lake Court directly to the west of the old Cheesy D's building there at Marsh Road, from the current zoning of RB, one family high density residential, and C1 neighborhood service. The property is currently split zone, to RCC multiple family residential zoning with a condition of that rezoning limiting the development to 12 dwelling units or 6 duplexes. The Planning Commission did hold a public hearing for this matter earlier this year, had no major concerns and voted to recommend approval. The board reviewed this at their last meeting and had no major concerns and directed staff to bring this forward. At this time, staff would recommend approval of the introduction. If the board chooses to approve this, we will publish the notice as required in a paper of general circulation and bring it back for final action at your next meeting.
Thank you. Board members. Is there a motion? Mr. Hendrickson.
Thank you, Madam Supervisor. I move to adopt the resolution of today's introduction, ordinance 2023-01, an ordinance to rezone the property at 1642 Lake Court Drive, parcel ID number 33020210207032 from RB, one family, high density residential, and C1 neighborhood service to RCC, multiple family residential, subject to a condition of rezoning limiting development on the lot to 12 dwelling units.
Support. Mr. Henderson, would you like to comment further?
Sure. We saw this at our last meeting, I believe, and this will effectively not increase the number of dwelling units that were possible on the property, on the parcel. The plan is for a number of duplexes, I believe, as I recall from our last meeting. And I think that this is an excellent opportunity for infill development and to clean up what are some properties that could use some revitalization in the Hazlet area. And so I wholeheartedly support it.
Okay. Trustee Wilson?
Agreed, and particularly because we're replacing blight with viable development. So that's the reason I'll be voting for it.
All right. Anyone else? Mr. Duchesne?
I too will be supporting this, and they have replaced blight. In fact, the homes are all down by that parcel a week ago. And so looks like once this approval, I would guess they're going to begin construction this spring. Is that what you understand this spring?
They still have they still do need to go through the site plan review process and work with the county drain commission and road commission on the necessary approvals.
Okay. It's a welcome addition to the Hazlet portion of our township.
Other comments? Well, the motion is to adopt the resolution. This is for introduction for ordinance 2023-01. It's the rezoning. All in favor of the motion, please say yes.
Yes.
Yes. Opposed, no. The motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Item 14B is a resolution to call for legislative action on gun violence prevention. Mr. Henderson.
Thank you, Madam Supervisor. I move to suspend our rules to consider item 14B for action at tonight's meeting.
Support.
Mr. Henderson?
This is something that I think is timely, given the events of the last several weeks. And I believe that it is crucial for our community and those in the area to voice their support to the legislature, who will be taking these bills up in short order.
And Trustee Wilson.
Yes, I support for the exact same reasons. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Henderson, would you like to highlight some of the features of the resolution?
I'd be happy to. It might be more prudent at the motion to approve rather than the suspension of the rules.
Must move to, so we're actually acting on the motion to suspend.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Let's see, this can be done by voice vote, I believe. All in favor of the motion to suspend our rules to consider this resolution, please say yes.
Yes.
Opposed, no. The motion carries unanimously. And now, Mr. Hendrickson.
Thank you, Madam Supervisor. I move to approve the attached resolution 14B, calling on the Michigan Legislature and Congress to action on gun violence prevention legislation.
Support. Supported by Trustee Wilson. Mr. Hendrickson.
Thank you, Madam Supervisor. I bring this resolution before us tonight with Trustee Wazinski and yourself as co-sponsors. However, I suspect that if it were possible for us all to sign on, that we would have. I'd ask for some latitude from Clerk Guthrie and her team, allowing my statement, which I'll provide, be printed in full in the minutes. I put a lot of thought into it, and I'm hopeful that that it can be at least a little bit meaningful to the community. Our community's been through hell the last 2 weeks. 2 weeks ago, the worst fears of parents, students, and teachers and administrators were all but realized at our high school in Okemos. A terrorist, and that's what they are, called in to emergency line to report that there was a gunman at Okemos High School. And that 2 students had already been shot. And we were incredibly fortunate as a community, incredibly fortunate to discover that this was indeed a hoax, and that our families were safe and sound. But this did not stop us from experiencing a traumatic event as a community. Trustee Wazinski at our last meeting told us of her experience as a parent, the fear that she had, the parent of a high school student at Okemos High School. Despite the fact that we emerged physically safe, our community was left with emotional damage that may take years to process fully. At our next meeting the next day, I sat before you and reminded us of how lucky we were, and mentioned that we may not be so lucky next time. And I've never in my life wanted to be more wrong than it ended up being, because just 6 days later, everything that we had feared came to pass. A gunman at our university, just 4 miles from this building, from where we sit tonight, Ariel Anderson, Alexandria Verner, Brian Frazier, 2 juniors and a sophomore, struck down in their place of learning. 5 more critically injured, and as of today, 1 is stable, 2 are in serious but stable condition, and 2 remain in critical condition. And 1 of these 5 is one of Okemos' own. All at the hands of someone with no connection to them, no connection to the university, someone who's been previously charged with gun crimes, someone whose own father barely recognized him after a traumatic loss in the family. I attended Michigan State University, as did my parents before me. I met my wife there, and she went there later on to obtain her master's degree as well. My wife was an MSU employee for a number of years, running camps for gifted and talented youth from across the state and beyond. One of the things that I feared when I started at MSU was how big it was. I sought out comfort in the familiar. I grew up in Troy, Michigan, which is a neighboring community to Clawson, which is where one of the victims was from. And I realized that nearly a quarter of my graduating class, over 100 students, would be attending MSU. And I further realized that if that trend had held true, that about 1% of all undergraduate students at MSU were from my high school. It's a boggling statistic to think about. And I did meet people who I knew from home, but I was also thrust into meeting scores of new friends who I grew up with, graduated with, and have stayed friends with to this day. But one of the most compelling parts of the community that Michigan State has created was taught to me on my first day when a senior stood up at an event, participation is what they called it back in the day, and let us know that wherever we were, if we were to run into another Spartan, we could always yell out, "Go green," and invariably, they would respond with "Go white." At the time, I didn't understand how important that would be. Meridian Township is inextricably linked to Michigan State University. Students live here and work here. Faculty live here and raise their families here. Nearly everyone who attends MSU at one point comes to Meridian Township, whether it's for our trails, our parks, our events, our shops, or more. If I asked those present here tonight to raise their hand if they could find a direct link to Michigan State University, I think we all know that everyone's hand in this room would be up. But even if we didn't, we're a community who cares for its residents and cares for its neighbors. I'll crib from President Roosevelt when he said about the Lend-Lease Act, when your neighbor's house is on fire, you don't stop to ask him to pay you for the garden hose. And I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge the fine work of our police, fire, and EMS heroes who are here tonight, and those that aren't here tonight. Because when the call came in, our personnel rushed in and were some of the first on the scene, as we heard from Chief Plaga and Chief Hamill. They deserve to be recognized again for their hard work. So thank you. They didn't hesitate to put themselves into an active situation, one that was fraught with misinformation, but they did their job. This good work should never have been necessary. This was a situation that should have been preventable. And that's why we're here tonight, to start the process of addressing the underlying causes of this incident and to ask our state legislatures and our members of Congress to step up in the wake of this unspeakable and traumatic event and to make changes that are both wildly popular and at the same time common sense. And I appreciate Representative Brixey coming tonight to tell us about the work that they've already started. I do. We'll be asking them in this resolution to take up laws that would require background checks universally before any weapons purchase. These laws would prevent those with histories of violent or irresponsible behavior from obtaining weapons that might be used for violence. We'll ask them to take up red flag laws or extreme risk protection orders so that our courts can, after deliberation and evidence, prevent those who are in imminent danger to themselves or others from owning firearms. We'll ask the legislature to create safe storage laws so that others, including small children, may not gain access to guns. We'll ask for a ban on assault-style weapons, prohibiting the sale of semi-automatic and automatic weapons, as they are the favorite weapon of those seeking to maximize terror and casualties from these sorts of incidents. And we'll ask for magazine capacity restrictions, which will slow down would-be assailants from being able to fire weapons quickly and repeatedly. As of tonight, the Michigan legislature has already begun their hard work, and we applaud them for their initiative here. They will likely face steep, swift, and well-funded opposition to their efforts, as one group has already come out to say that they will recall anyone who votes for gun control legislation. I believe it is our duty and our obligation to stand up and tell them that they have our support, and that passing this resolution will do just that. I think that, tonight by passing this resolution, we'll be pledging ourselves to a cause, but also to our neighbors and our communities. We know that there were those in the MSU community who were at Sandy Hook when that event occurred. We know that there were those at MSU who were at Oxford, and we know that there are those who had family members who were both places and who were both in Okemos schools last week and at MSU this week, who have faced or thought they were facing two of these incidents in as many weeks. I've said before, when this resolution, a similar resolution came up last May, that my wife was a teacher at a local junior high school, and she still is. And she goes to school every day, and in addition to planning lessons, grading homework, and proctoring tests, she has to consider what she would do if her school was next. She has to decide whether her class should be running, hiding, or fighting in the face of an active, violent active incident. She has to be counselor to grieving students who are terrified by what happened last week, and dozens more who are worried that they'll be next. And I worry about her safety. I worry about what would happen if I got the call one day. Too often. My children are young. My oldest will be starting kindergarten in Okemos in the fall. And we've been pretty good about shielding him from what's been going on. But next year, someday, rather than learning about sharing or reading or writing or all the things that a child of 5 should be learning, his teacher will have to explain about hiding behind their desks, barricading their doors, and staying silent. No student, staff, parent, no one should have to worry about their loved one being shot in school. Schools are meant to be temples of knowledge, not war-torn regions where they face death on a daily basis. They should not be. This ordeal has forced me to reflect a lot over the last few days. And I keep coming back to that first day on campus when they explained what Go Green meant. They were explaining a call and response. When someone responds with Go White, they are responding to you. They're telling you that you're not alone. They are, without saying anything else, telling you that they share so many iconic Spartan experiences. They're telling you that they're a member of your community and of your family. And I like to think that they're telling you that they are here for you. That's certainly how I view it now. And so I ask my colleagues to please support this resolution tonight. And go green.
Are there other members of the board? Courtney?
There's.
Trustee Wazinski.
Thank you, Trustee Hendrickson. That was very thoughtful, very moving, very touching. Not too much I can add to that you haven't already said. But I 100% support this, and I'll do whatever we can to help the legislature.
Others? Then to pass the resolution, to approve the attached resolution, calling on the Michigan legislature and Congress to act on gun violence prevention legislation. Could we have a roll call vote, Mr. Lemaster? Yes.
Clerk Guthrie?
Yes.
Treasurer DeShane?
Yes.
Trustee Hendrickson?
Yes.
Trustee Sundland?
Yes.
Trustee Wilson?
Yes.
Trustee Wazinski?
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Hendrickson.
Thank you.
We move now to item 14C. And Manager Walsh will introduce the next few items.
Thank you. Again, this issue has been before you on, now this is the 4th occasion. It's something that we've been working on with our fire and police unions. We have 3 unions involved. We have the firefighters union, police patrol, and police command. Going back 3 years ago, we negotiated a 5-year agreement with those 3 bargaining groups. And it was a 2-year, 2% increase per year for 5 years. And so we are in the 4th year. January 1 of 23 started the 4th year of that agreement. And that agreement then terminates on December 31 of 2024. So we have approximately 21 months remaining on that contract. When we negotiated this contract, the terms seemed pretty fair back at the time, 2% per year. Today, it doesn't seem like it matches the economy, doesn't match what people with inflation and all of that. So we've been talking to our unions irregularly in the last 2.5 months and letting them know that we're putting together a proposal to bring to them. What we've offered all three unions mirrors exactly what we provided to all of our other team members. So when we're talking about the unions, we're talking about roughly 34 in the firefighter paramedic, and roughly 38 in the police department, although the police department is sworn at 41. That's broken up between the command and patrol. So what's before you tonight is mirrors exactly what was approved for other unions, and that is a 3% increase and an additional one-time 5% increase for those that are at the top of their step or those that don't have a step process. Police union, police patrol, and fire union have a step process, which is now 4 steps. It used to be 6. But other positions are at a salary level and they have no steps to them, and those folks would receive the 3% and the 5% one-time adjustment. So what we've offered to all 3 of these next agenda items is that 3% and 5%. It would take effect with immediately with the next payroll if it's approved by the board tonight. I will share with you that the firefighter union under C, they've not finished their process. They have a 72-hour window of bargaining or with voting on a contract extension. So what we've provided or what we've requested is a 4-year agreement. So if this is approved by the unions, and I want them to take their time in doing it, it would our contract that was set to expire on December 31 of 24 would now expire December 31 of 2026. So it would be basically an 8% increase in 23, and then 3, 3, and 3 would be the new contract. So again, that mirrors other unions. We're waiting on the firefighter. I talked to TJ Booms just a little while ago. They're having a meeting tonight to explain the contract offer, and they'll begin a 72-hour voting process, which would end probably Saturday morning. We would know where they're at. And if this happens, this item would be in front of you. If it's approved, ratified by the fire union, it would be before you on March 7th. So that's an update on the fire union prospect, and I appreciate President TJ Booms contacting me earlier this evening and letting me know where they're at in the process. We've had some good discussions with them. Moving on to D, I won't belabor the point. It's the same thing what we offered. The Police Officers Association, which would be the police patrol, they have approved, they've had their vote, they've approved it, so it's before you tonight for your consideration. And it's everything I just said, it about a 4-year term, the contract, and all of that.
Okay. Board members. We are considering item 14D. Mr. DeShane.
Just clarification, so because we haven't heard back from the firefighters, 14C would have to be put off until we've heard back from the union, is that correct?
That's what I would recommend.
Okay.
I would recommend not voting on it until it's ratified by the union.
Okay. I'd like to thank you for bringing this before the board and being proactive about this. The firefighters and the police officers are experiencing the same inflation that we are, the same cost of living, increasing costs across the board. And this is equitable. This is fair. In reopening the union contract and extending it out additional 2 years is a great idea. It's fair for them, just as the 8% for the rest of our employees was fair earlier this year, last year. So I fully intend to support this. Just a clarification, this is not a one-time bonus. This will be 8% increase in base salaries for all employees. Is that correct?
Correct.
So this will, and I understand you're recommending that the cost of this be taken out of some of our ARPA funds?
Correct, and I'll cover that under F.
Okay. But before I finish, I want to say this also, I think, to me, points why our making additional pension payments is essential, because this is going to impact our pension payments. We're increasing base salaries, which increases pensions. But with the extra money we're putting in and the lower multiplier, we can absorb this in a way that we wouldn't be if we were making the minimum annual contribution. So thank you again for bringing this to us.
Thank you.
So do I have a motion? Mr. Hendrickson?
So I think then, based on the manager's comments with regard to 14C, it would be prudent to move to table this resolution, on this action item, until our March 7th meeting. So I'll go ahead and make that motion.
And that's for item 14C specifically.
Yes.
All right, Mr. DeShane?
Excuse me, we need to vote on that motion first. Go.
Yes. Other comments? Then the motion is to table item 14C. Mr. Lemaster, I believe we'll take a roll call vote in this instance.
Yes.
Trustee Hendrickson.
Yes.
Trustee Sundlund.
Yes.
Trustee Wilson.
Yes.
Trustee Wazinski.
Yes.
Supervisor Jackson.
Yes.
Clerk Guthrie.
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0.
Thank you. That item is tabled, and we move to 14D. Need a new motion? Mr. DeShane.
Thank you. I move to approve the township manager's recommendation to approve the attached wage increase as presented, including an extension of the current employment contract with the Police Officers Association of Michigan through December 31st, 2026.
Supported by trustee Wazinski. Mr. DeShane?
I think the manager had some more, he wanted to speak to this one. I'd like to hear from him on the item D.
Actually, I've said all that I probably could say about it. We have a group that we really need to take a look at, as we've been saying for a number of months. We need to take a look at our public safety employees, both police and fire, and bring them more in line for what we've done with other team members. And this is a group that really deserves the boost, and that's why it's before you tonight.
Okay. Trustee Wazinski.
I just want to commend the manager for taking this opportunity and recognizing again, having that forethought, that that equity amongst our staff, and specifically our police and fire. And I know this isn't an easy task, and I think we have the best possible outcome. So thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Hendrickson.
Thank you, Madam Supervisor. I'll add to the chorus of those who are thanking the manager for taking a very proactive step here. It would be very easy for the township to sit on the current contract for the next 2 years, delaying what is a common sense amendment to that contract. And so I think this is an excellent proactive move from the township, and one that I think also, especially given the current circumstances, would allow us to show some appreciation to those members of our police and fire bargaining units. So thank you to Manager Walsh for doing that, and I'll be supporting this motion.
Other comments? Then Mr. DeShane.
Yes, it's referenced earlier that this will be paid for by a recommendation to take $270,000 from the ARPA funds that we had set aside for the new community center, senior center, and move them into this pay increase. And as a member of that task force, it does not seem like they were going to be spending that money this year. That's a long-term project, and that money may eventually make a contribution. We will have other ways to put that money back in future years. This is more important. This is essential to show this recognition and provide the equity for our police and fire. So I appreciate the suggestion to move this money from the ARPA funds. So we're not just giving these fair wage increases to our firefighters and police, we're paying for it at the same time.
And I have one question, Mr. Walsh. These go into effect immediately upon passage?
Correct. If it's approved this evening by the board, it would take effect with payroll in 72 hours.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Lemaster, can we get a roll call vote for item 14E, which is the wage adjustment contract extension consideration? D, I'm sorry, for Police Officers Association of Michigan.
Trustee Hendrickson?
Yes.
Trustee Sundland?
Yes.
Trustee Wilson?
Yes.
Trustee Wazinski?
Yes.
Supervisor Jackson?
Yes.
Clerk Guthrie?
Yes.
Treasurer DeShane?
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0.
And then,
Thank you.
Mr. Ross?
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Item 14E is the same kind of consideration for the Police Supervisory Unit. Mr. Hendrickson.
Thank you, Madam Supervisor. I move to approve the Township Manager's recommendation to approve the attached wage increase as presented, including an extension of the current employment contract with the Meridian Township Police Supervisory Unit through December 31, 2026.
Second.
Supported by Trustee Sunderland. Mr. Hendrickson.
Thank you, Madam Supervisor. I think that everything I said about the last resolution also applies to this one. This will move, I think, all but one then of our collective bargaining agreements to this arrangement. I think this is a step closer to equity amongst all of our employees, and I applaud it. So thank you.
Trustee Sunderland?
Oh, no, this is just keeping in line with what we're doing as a township to provide support for all of our staff. Very important to keep their interest and know that they're appreciated.
Thank you. Any further comments? Mr. Lemaster?
Trustee Sundland?
Yes.
Trustee Wilson?
Yes.
Trustee Wazinski?
Yes.
Supervisor Jackson?
Yes.
Clerk Guthrie?
Yes.
Treasurer DeShane?
Yes.
Trustee Hendrickson?
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0.
Thank you.
I would note, Madam Supervisor Board, that Sergeant Squires is here this evening. I didn't know if, from the command unit, I didn't know if you wanted to, if there's anything you wanted to say. I would offer you the opportunity.
As the manager said, Kurt Squires with the command unit. I do appreciate, I want to take this second to appreciate your unanimous support from the board, supervisor, the manager, chief's office, HR. We appreciate your support and continued support, like you said, especially at this time. But it's nice to have this continued support. We appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kurt.
Item 14F, redesignation of American Rescue Plan or ARP funds. Mr. Walsh.
As Treasurer DeShane indicated, we're requesting that $300,000 be moved from the account that was earmarked for the Senior Community Center over to pay for this. We are able to absorb this increase in '24 moving forward, but it's not in this year's budget, so we're trying to not have a hole in the '23 budget. So we're recommending that $300,000 from the American Rescue Plan be transferred to the general fund to cover the cost.
Okay. Questions, comments, a motion? Mr. DeShane.
I move to approve the recommendation from the Township Manager and Finance Director to transfer $300,000 originally earmarked for the Senior Community Center feasibility study from the American Rescue Plans to the general fund.
Support.
Support by Mr. Hendrickson. Further comments?
No further comment.
No further comments? Mr. Hendrickson?
Ordinarily, I would take slight issue with the fact that we're moving money for all three when only two have been approved, but we can always move it back.
That is true.
So there we are.
Clerk Guthrie.
Thank you, Madam Supervisor. I just wanted to say that I think this is a good use of funds, a much better use of funds. And that I appreciate the manager and our HR director working with our police and fire teams on these contracts for better wages for them, for retention, for training, and the job that they're doing here at Meridian Township. I think it's important when we're competing against others across the state that we retain the officers that we're investing in. So thank you for putting this together, and I think this is a much better use of funds.
Thank you. Other board members? Then the motion is to approve the recommendation from the manager and finance director to transfer $300,000 originally earmarked for Senior Community Center feasibility study. Mr. Lemaster, I believe we need a roll call vote.
Trustee Wilson?
Yes.
Trustee Wazinski?
Yes.
Supervisor Jackson?
Yes.
Clerk Guthrie?
Yes.
Treasurer DeShane?
Yes.
Trustee Hendrickson?
Yes.
Trustee Sundland?
Yes.
Motion carried 7-0.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Walsh.
If I may, just make one suggestion that the board may want to take up. The weather report on the west side of the state along the lakefront is already starting to turn, not for the best. And I know we have some guests here who are here for 15B, and they need to drive back to the lake shore. So I'll leave that up to you whether you change your agenda or not. Thank you.
All right. Mr. Lamar, we're at discussion items. Mr. Walsh has made a suggestion. Is there a motion to make that switch? Mr. Henderson?
Thank you, Madam Supervisor. I move that we amend our agenda to take up item 15B before item 15A as printed on our agenda.
Support.
Okay. All in favor of that motion, please say yes.
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 Opposed, no. Motion passes unanimously. Move to 15B, Hazard Village Square Commercial Rehabilitation Exemption Application.
Hello.
Clark.
Hello. All right, included in your packet is the application for the exemption that we held a public hearing for earlier this evening. So it is, again, the same project, 1621 and 1655 Hazlet Road. Comprises about 19 and a half acres of what we kind of consider blighted, vacant, now completely vacant commercial properties. It does include the two very scary looking houses at the soon to be vacated Raby Road. So I'm very excited to see those go as well. The whole project should include about 290 housing units through various stacked flats and some townhouses in the back, and an additional update to the park trail at the interurban trailhead with bathrooms. Tonight, the board is to discuss the application as presented. You have a resolution attached that you would adopt, and the adoption of that resolution would allow myself to submit the application to the STC for the exemption. The application essentially says that the abatement is less than 5% of the total taxable value of Meridian Township, which it does calculate that way. It's a 10-year abatement, specifies the property, and I think it was in May or June of last year when the district for the rehab area was established. So we're well on the right way to get this into STC's hands, as well as on the other half, back-end work that I'm doing for this project, helping to make sure that the developers get the signed agreements for the brownfield plan from MEDC. So I'm hoping to have those lined up at the same time so that demolition can occur in the spring like we hope.
Okay. So, board, we have, what is before us is the approval mechanism, which, and so I guess right after the public hearing, where we have done our due diligence, The question is whether or not we are ready to put it on the agenda at our next meeting for a decision about approval and of, based on the requirements for approval. Comment? Mr. Hendrickson.
Thank you, Madam Supervisor. Director Clark, I didn't notice any substantive changes to the application since it was before us, 4 months ago?
Yes.
Is that accurate?
Correct.
Then I would have.
The largest change is the date. That is
Right.
effectively the only change that I have.
So I supported it then, I support it now. I say we put it on our next agenda.
Is that the consensus? Then we will expect to see it at our next regular meeting.
I will bring it back for action.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We will now go to item 15A, recreational marijuana ordinances. We're in an ongoing discussion with Mr. Schmidt.
Oh, it's with all of us, not just me. And I have with us this evening one of the attorneys from Fay Schultz, Urchik?
Yeah.
Urchik.
Fay Schultz, Berzik Roads.
Berzik Roads. Trent Cunningham. So after the last meeting of the Township Board, there was some feedback that we got, and the Township Board asked that this matter come back this evening for discussion, and then we were also having a work session next Tuesday, the 28th, to discuss this topic. So I'll be brief this evening. There were just as a reminder, there are sort of three pieces to this process. The zoning ordinance updates, which the Planning Commission has reviewed, recommended approval of, they did also recommend that we include grow operations potentially on Hagedorn Road. The licensing piece for both recreational and changes to the medical licensing to bring it all into compliance with each other. So they all talk together, and the licensing piece is what Trent and Matt Cushel, the township attorney who's regularly working on this, have been working on over the past several months. And so we brought that all together at the February 7th meeting. There are a couple of minor changes that we did incorporate into the ordinance based on the feedback we got. We did change the ordinances as necessary to limit to one licensed premises per overlay, which was the direction of the board. And we did make a minor change to the zoning ordinance based on that feedback. So we incorporated those couple of items. There's still plenty more to talk about, obviously. We're happy to take those topics down this evening and be prepared to follow up on them at the meeting next Tuesday, or we can attempt to answer them this evening. I will say that both Trent and I know what we're talking about, but we'll defer a lot of the licensing minutia to Mr. Cushel next Tuesday. Anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, so I'm Trent Cunningham. I work at Fay Schultz, Berzik Roads. I'm actually a third year, my final year of law school at Michigan State, so I just want to I appreciate as a student of Michigan State the comments this board made tonight, but I've been working with attorney Matt Cushel on this project a lot, and just looking forward to getting some feedback from the board tonight and taking it back to him and working on it, and hopefully giving you guys some answers going forward. So thank you.
Okay.
So if there are any specific topics that you would like us to be prepared to discuss next Tuesday, or have any questions that are still burning, now would be an excellent time to provide them to me.
Good way to put it. Anyone ready? Trustee Wilson.
Thank you, Madam Supervisor. I've got a couple of things on my mind as I've been looking at this ordinance over the last couple weeks. We have an attorney who we contract with who prosecutes all of our cases. That's Colin Harkness at the Harkness Law Firm. Has he had an opportunity to review this ordinance for following the law? I mean, how would he go about, how does he view it in terms of, does the language support having a misdemeanor, having some kind of prosecution of a misdemeanor if the law is not followed or the ordinance is not followed. Has he weighed in on this at all?
No, it's not something, it's an interesting question. It's not something we would normally kick over to our prosecuting attorneys. I'm happy to have that conversation with them. Yeah, let me get back to you on that issue.
I appreciate that. Also, I was thinking about, we get a lot of biased reporting, pro and con, about the public health impact. And it's hard to dissect who's behind the publication. Is there any resource, have we gone to, say, our public health director in Ingham County to ascertain what the truth is about marijuana usage? I just read a recent article that now the #1 adolescent use is marijuana. And I'm not saying I'm for or against, but have we seen anything that is not biased in terms of, could we bring anything forward from CDC, I'm going to say the acronym wrong, from the National Institute of Health, anything that we could that's really solid that we could look at?
I mean, I think one of the issues that you run into with something like that is marijuana is a scheduled drug, and you haven't been able to get federal funding to study it over the years. And so that's what you're finding is that the information is coming from sources that aren't as rock solid as the CDC.
Yeah.
Happy to look into it a little further. I can tell you that anytime I've looked into something on this topic, I've also looked into who's writing it.
Exactly.
It's also become sort of my standard operating procedure on anything nowadays, is what's the source. But happy to look into it a little further, but I think that is the main problem here, is that there's been a difficulty in getting federal funding for studying this topic.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Duchesne.
Thank you. Appreciate you coming to us to ask us what things we want to look at in our study session to make the most use of that time. I think it would be useful to have Prosecutor Harkness there. I mean, if we were going to rewrite our minor in possession of alcohol rules today, we would want to talk to him because he's the one that prosecutes those, writes those tickets for those misdemeanors. And so I think the impact, the enforceability, if you will, of any ordinance, licensing ordinance, I think would be valuable. I have a couple of questions I'd like to look into, and that is, what are we expecting to be the gross annual sales of these stores based on current data out there? The figure, back of the envelope figure I came up with a couple of years ago was about $2 million per store. And took that just by dividing the gross sales of the number of stores in Michigan at the time, came up with a figure of $2 million. Is that still operating number? Has it increased? Has it decreased? And I'd also like to know what product are they going to be selling. Let's say it comes out to $2 million a store. How does that break out in terms of, gummy bears compared to liquids, compared to leaf products? I'd like to know how that would reach the consumer per store. Just averages, of course. Another figure I came across in doing some research was these ratios, the number of stores per population. There's a group called the Public Health Institute, which is funded by the Hilton Foundation, that said in California they recommended 1 store per 15,000 people. And I've heard that Washington State uses a figure of 1 store per 22,000 people. These guidelines they work with, are these statute, are these recommended, are these in dispute, but what are those ratios? Ward appears to be looking at 5 per store, which would be about 1 per 8,000 people. But does those ratios match up with what other states are using as guidelines? Lynn Page sent us a whole lot of information on the public health aspect of it, and I agree with you. We got to find. We've had 10 years of legalization in Colorado, California, and less time in Washington, and obviously less time here in Michigan. But there has to be some data-based research out there with some information on the health effects of recreational marijuana. And if we can find that, if we can bring that forward, it would be useful, particularly because the the group that seems to impact most are those with still plastic brains, which is that 18 to 25-year-old age group, that cohort. And those are also those most likely to be consumers of this product if it's legalized. And so what happens in states that legalize it to consumption by that group? And do we have any data from what that consumption does, increased consumption does? That would be really useful stuff to know, I think. So again, as much as you can bring it to us on public health data that's been done from states that have also legalized ratios, and then how much marijuana sales should we expect per store once we agree to pass the zoning and licensing laws, that ordinances that allow that. So thanks for asking.
Trustee Sunland.
Isn't the legal age of recreational marijuana 21 to purchase? What is that legal age?
Yeah, it's 21. Yep, for recreational, it's 21.
Yeah,
Yep.
so we're talking about, the public and access and, I don't know how anything that is legal, how do you keep the kids from indulging, I think it's probably going to be an age-old issue, alcohol, marijuana. And I understand that you're saying that the recreational marijuana is becoming the drug of use. But, yeah, so I was just wanting to clarify that the legal age is 21 to purchase recreational.
Trustee Wazinski.
I have a few questions that I was hoping to get some additional, thank you Supervisor, to get some additional information potentially and or for our study session. Three main questions. My first main question is, this is a sub-question that's going to be before the main question. So the title of this particular ordinance is proposed to be changed to marijuana regulations. So question to Director Schmidt is, does that include currently within this ordinance, and I've tried to delineate and I just can't do it myself, but does that include currently both recreational and medical?
Oh, that's right, we're changing the top header. So what that, okay, so the main header for that section right now has a different reference. And so what that first clause is doing is it's retitling it to cover everything. And then there's a subcategory for medical, and there will be a subcategory for recreational. So it's more of a housekeeping change.
Thank you, that's helpful. Second question is regarding current permit holders, and I think we may have touched on this last time, but the current permit holders have invested pretty significantly into the township already and didn't have an opportunity to be successful given multiple reasons, but one of them being COVID. So that, restricted many things, including building, permitting, production, supplies. So I'm wondering if that's something we can't bring to the study group, is how can we be fair to those who have already invested significantly into our community with the medical permit in hand? I know there's a lot of questions with that, and I have that too, but I'm hoping that we can talk about that further, and how we might be able to be pro-business and encouraging to those folks that have already, committed to be to invest. The other one that I would like to discuss a little further, and I think we touched on it, and I'm not sure where we landed on as a board, but the grow operation. So, as I understand it, we had not received any applications for grow, transport, or processing. in the past, and I'm wondering, is there, outside of zoning, is there another reason we want to include grow in the new ordinance?
So, correct, we've not received any interest in that in the past. That's, the current ordinance is set up prohibiting everything essentially but retail sales. The planning commission at the last minute kind of got a thought of maybe adding the idea of a grow operation in the Hagedorn Road overlay. It would need to be incorporated into all of the ordinances because when this is done, they're going to all act in concert. Because there's obviously was a concern, well, you might issue 5 over here and 5 over here. That's not going to be the case. These are all going to play together in the sandbox in the end. So the input that we took from the last meeting was that there was not a desire to do that because it potentially opened us up to litigation by only having it in one location. If the board wants to circle back on that, we can. It is going to take us some work to reincorporate everything.
I'm not suggesting that.
Okay.
I was just, I didn't know where we landed on that,
Yeah.
and I didn't see it.
What you have in front of you has taken the language out and is clear that grow operations under any circumstances are not permitted.
Excellent, thank you. Third question, and I'll leave the rest for our study session, but another thing I would like to talk about further is transfer of application. Currently, we prohibit that extensively for 30 months, which is 2.5 years. And just reflecting on the last 2.5 years, we can't predict how the market nor the supply chain or construction might be affected. So it's just something I'd like to talk about a little bit more. I know there's more than one option when it comes to transfer, so it doesn't necessarily have to be yes or no. So maybe something else we can discuss at the study session. And I think I'll leave the rest for the study session alone. Those are my top 3 that I felt could use more discussion on my end.
I can say that the question of transfers is one that we've been working on so far, so we plan to have that one ready for the study session.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Supervisor. I think Trustee Wazinski asked a few of the questions that I had, so thank you. So I guess my perspective or question would be in regards to the amount of work that this requires on staff and how the township prepares to handle that on the back end. And in regards to anything, because I'm with Trustee Wilson regarding so many different reports on public safety needs and this and that, that I'm not really sure what's accurate. Do we need, if there's a grow operation, do we need another ladder truck? How do we do code enforcement? Do these things need to be really beefed up or looked at or anything like that? And then so that's something that I would like to know at the study session, is what kind of staff strength this requires and any budgetary concerns that we would need to be aware of in regards to a new type of business that we haven't had in the township before that we may need to address. And then at the last meeting, I brought up curbside service, drive-through service. And when I look at this ordinance, I wasn't originally on the board when this was made, and I understand the planning commission's recommendations. I still have concerns regarding the ability for people to get in and out of their vehicles, going in and out of a facility, having access, providing equity to people who aren't as mobile as other people. So I still would like to know in the study session what that would look like, if that's something that we can do as part of what's already been written. I don't really know those things. So I would like to know that and have that discussion in the study session. I think those are my main, my two biggest, I mean, there's a few other things that I think I can save for the study session, but those are the two biggest things that I wanted to learn from it to present to you tonight.
Absolutely.
So I have several questions that relate specifically to the ordinances that we're looking at. So what you're saying to us at this point is that we have agreed on the structure of the overlay districts because the sizes have been reduced in some of them. Is that correct?
I'm certainly not speaking for the board in terms of we've agreed on it.
Oh.
This was, what you have is staff's recommendation to the planning commission, which then made a positive recommendation to the board.
Right.
If there's further discussion that needs to happen, obviously, that's what we're here for.
Okay, but one of the things they did was reduce the size.
Some of the feedback they gave us was with respect to the size, and so we told them.
That's what you
take
brought
a second
to
look
us.
at it, and we found some areas where obvious changes could be made to further reduce the potential expansion in the future.
Okay. And you eliminated one of the, I think we had 6 in the beginning.
We eliminated 2. There were 2 overlays. There was a second overlay on the Dawn Avenue area that we eliminated at both Director Clark and myself's recommendation to not put further pressure on the industrial districts in the township. And we eliminated the district that was on Towner Road, which was always a bit of a difficult development proposition.
Right. So at this point, I am in support of those changes that you've made. The number 4 on Hagedorn Road.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm presuming that the reason the idea of growth came up was because of the zoning, underlying zoning on that particular site.
So there is a path under the existing medical that would allow a potential grow operation, but no one has chosen to take us up on that.
So far.
And so given that that was the last remaining one in the discussion we heard, it was, at this point, it is not in the ordinance.
It has been taken out of the ordinance.
At this time,
At this
yes.
point, okay. Okay. I think I would like to reconsider that possibility of a smaller type of facility. I think one of the suggestions in the proposal was a micro business class, class A. And I recognize why I would say entrepreneurs are not particularly excited about that possibility. But due to the zoning difference between that site and all of our other sites, which are commercial sites, is there no value, or can we find no value in the possibility of that different kind of facility on that site? And I do remember that at the last time we talked about this, there was discussion about whether or not you would allow growing, this small amount of growing on this site based on its underlying zoning and not allow it on the other 5 sites or the other 4 sites. But just in general, I'm not, I think, I guess in my mind, I'm not finished with that, with thinking about that, that idea.
Understood.
But basically, the idea is it is possible to allow a grow type of operation, small grow type of operation on that particular site because of its underlying zoning. So we'll leave that as a question for the time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Another thing is, so we're talking about the possibility of 5 recreational permits.
Correct.
And yet we have 5 medical permits.
Correct. But, sort of. We have 5 pre-approved licensees, none of which have actually received a permit because none of them have ever gotten to the point of operations. Our ordinance is set up on the medical side in a multi-tiered system. So you go through the lottery, which you get pre-qualified, which means you have all the application information. You go through the lottery and you're selected. You then go through the special use permit process, get your special use permit. You then get your building permits, state approval, and then we come in at the end. They're functionally at the same time as the state approval at the end when you're ready to open. So that, nobody has actually gotten to the point of a permit. Several have gotten close down that line. I think what we're trying to do with the ordinance is to not double dip and have 10, I think, is
right.
the point. We've said this all along, that the idea would be that there would be some overlap, and it would be one sort of licensed premises or one license within each of the overlays, as opposed to one medical and one recreational.
So let's go back for a minute. No one has a permit. No one has has gotten a permit for Meridian Township.
Correct.
But 5 applicants have state licenses for medical marijuana sales. Because they have to
Yes,
get
they're pre-approved under, they have, is it pre-approval? Yeah. It's pre-approval with the state as well, that they get pre-approved as a business with a location to be determined.
Do they have, and they also have what are considered LAURA licenses for medical marijuana?
They would not have,
in the
they would not have their license yet because they do not have an approved location. The licenses are granted to individual locations. All of the 5 are in this like interstitial space of moving towards the goal, but have not gotten far enough to actually have issuance at the goal.
Issuance from the state or from the township?
Both.
Okay. So, but all of them passed the special use permit on a site?
No.
Acquired a special use
All
permit
of
on
the
a
special
site?
use permits are expired and they are needing to renew.
They have expired.
Yes. Again, the medical ordinance has different criteria than the underlying special use permit requirements. And so 4 of the 5 need to go through the process of special use permit application again.
Okay. Let's talk about so if you only have 5 sites and you potentially have 10 licenses, 10 permits, 5 medical and 5 recreational. How does that work?
We're happy to get into the details of how we expect that to work at the work session. We'll follow up on that.
Okay. And back to a question I raised at the last meeting. Is there any way to ensure that all facilities have both kinds of licenses?
Again, as we talked about last time, I think that's going to come with the review criteria, just sort of the next step of this process. It does not appear as though we can require them to have both
Okay.
legally. But it may be a situation where if you have both, it's a benefit to you under the review process.
Okay. Mr. Hendrickson.
Thank you, Madam Supervisor. That actually raises a point that I was curious about, which I'd like to explore at the study session, which is my understanding from our last meeting was that there is a separate policies and procedures for the application process, or a separate, document of some kind where we lay out a rubric for the application process, wherein we could, let's just, for the lack of a better way of putting it, assign points for various qualifications that an applicant may provide. And so we could theoretically say, if you already have a medical SUP approved in the township, that would get you a certain number of points, which could advantage those previously permit limbo applicants for getting approved for a adult use recreational license. Is that accurate?
That's certainly something that can be taken into account during the scoring process.
So I think it would be helpful at the study session to outline sort of what does or what could or could not go into that process, what the next steps in this process are after the zoning ordinance is considered and the non-zoning ordinance is considered. There also seems to be some discussion as to, holding multiple permits. We're not talking about having 10, right? My understanding is that the medical ordinance as it exists today will more or less be no more and be subsumed by this ordinance. Is that accurate?
That's not accurate. The medical and the recreational would exist side by side because they both have their own criteria for how you get to an actual permit to sell.
Right.
And they have different enabling legislation that has its own nuances, so they have to be kept separate if the intention is to allow both med and rec.
Okay. I think, I don't speak for everyone on the board, of course, but my sense of things based on previous discussions that we've had is that no one intends for there to be 10 establishments.
We agree.
Okay. So I think the application process and procedures is something I'd like to talk about. Sounds like we're already going to be talking about transfers at the study session, so that's helpful. Something that I'll say that I'm overall very happy with what I see on paper here, right? I think we're in a pretty good spot to get into the very nitty-gritty of it. The only thing that I flagged as, and I talked about this last time, was the sign discrepancy, right? And I understand that we find ourselves in a weird sign limbo world where signs can be regulated for marijuana establishments differently than for anywhere else, given the way we are addressing signs in our sign ordinance update. I wonder, however, since we are consolidating all the sign language into one comprehensive sign update, if we should be instead referencing in this ordinance the fact that if you want to know about signs, you can look for it in the sign ordinance and have it there instead.
I tried. This is literally the only sign ordinance reference now outside of the sign ordinance, unfortunately. Mr. Kushel would recommend that we keep it here.
Okay. Well, we like doing what Mr. Kushel says. And lastly, and I think it would be helpful for us to discuss this at our study session, so that we can be as clear as we can be with the public who has been hearing us talk about this issue for now many, many years. I think we should discuss what timing we should all expect for this ordinance's rollout, because it's been something that we've been working on for a while. Staff has clearly put in a lot of effort into this. Our attorneys have put into a lot of effort into this, and a lot of members of this board have put in a lot of effort into this, and making sure that we get it done right, and that it reflects the values of the community. And so having a sense of when this can be expected, I think is good for us to sort of give ourselves a goal. It's also good for those businesses, as Trustee Wazinski pointed out, who have made an effort to, sort of get their foot in the door and make an investment into the community already, for them to understand where our thoughts are. I think it's important for us to be upfront with them, and I think that some discussion by this body on that topic would be of value as well. So that's what I've got for now. Thank you.
Trustee Wazinski.
Thank you, Supervisor. One more. Regarding it, because it came up in conversation already, commence operations. So I would like to look at that a little bit further, at least have discussion about the timing for commencing operations. Currently, it's set at within 18 months, and the board would have the ability to increase it to 6 months, given justification. And again, looking at some supply shortages and some other things, just would like to have that conversation as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I can tell you that I believe that language actually came from the industry the first time through.
Okay.
Because they did not want people to get these licenses and sit on them.
Sure.
Which
Okay.
is exactly what happened.
Trustee, Clerk Guthrie.
Thank you, Madam Supervisor. Since this was mentioned with Trustee Hendrickson, is there a reason why medical and recreational would exist side by side, and recreational just wouldn't consume the medical or medical? I mean, nothing's been built. No one's.
There's two answers to that question.
Okay.
From a statewide perspective, there are two enabling legislations. They have two different sets of guidelines of how you handle things under them. So if you want to have both of them, you have to have two separate licensing standards. The second question more to the point is, if you don't want one or the other, you just get rid of that one and just go with the one, which is our current system, that we allow medical but not recreational.
Can we get rid of medical and just have recreational since no one's done medical?
I take my direction from the board. I'm a humble.
But that's an option, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Does that pose a problem with we don't have any permits, right?
Happy to discuss that further.
Okay.
Work session.
That's a punt to Mr. Kushel right there.
It's a punt to not having that red light.
I would add at this point that I am not in favor of not having or not permitting medical. And my preference would be both in the same facility, but that's my preference. Anyone else? Okay, that enough to keep you busy for a
Not
while?
at all. I was hoping for another half hour. But, we have plenty of information and notes, and we will be prepared to talk next Tuesday.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item on our agenda is 15C. This is an informational presentation by Mr. Walsh.
Right, the Board of Water and Light allows for a seat on the board every 4 years from Meridian Township. This started in 2015. with the appointment of Mike Froh, who lives in the Wardcliff neighborhood. And the board appointed him in 2015 and again in 2019. Mike Froh represented Meridian Township. 2023, July 1, will begin a one-year cycle for Meridian Township. I'm just bringing it up tonight to letting you know the BWL, the Board of Water and Light, contacted me last week to let me know, bringing it forward to you this evening so you can ponder that. Think about how you want to move forward over the next couple of months. Thank you.
Questions, comments? Mr. Hendrickson?
Thank you, Madam Supervisor. Has anyone reached out to Mr. Froh?
Not yet. I think, as far as I know.
No, I would not do that unless the board asks.
And no one else had. No. Trustee Wilson.
A question. What portion of the township is covered by Board of Water and Light? It's a tiny fraction, isn't it?
It is, it is.
So is it only Wardcliff?
Yeah,
A portion of Wardcliff?
It's more than Wardcliff. I think it's about, if I recall correctly, it's about 8 or 9% of our total coverage area.
Do you know the boundaries?
I don't offhand. Do you? Do you know? Okay.
Oh, who knows? A map.
There's an overlay.
There's an overlay for that.
Where did it go?
Is this what GIS gets us?
This is amazing.
It was on our GIS map. It may have been pulled down off the public map. My apologies.
It's a little greater than Wardcliff, but not much.
It's, yeah.
Okay, that was gonna be so cool.
It's really the eastern boundary. It extends
Yeah.
very narrowly easternly, so it's really our western boundary, and it runs the full north-south limit.
Oh, it does.
Yep, we can
So-
provide a map at your next meeting that you discussed.
The intent is to have a representative who is in that service area,
Right.
correct?
The previous boards just chose to look at it that way. Yes.
Oh, so they don't have to live in that area?
No, they do.
Oh.
Oh, they don't.
No.
The BWL guidelines didn't require that the person live in there?
I don't believe so. I think that was just a decision, if I recall. Now, I'm going back 8 years ago to 2015 when it was first decided by the board. I think that was their decision to have someone, but I believe it can be anyone in the township.
Okay.
But I'll check on that for you. And then if you, it's up to, if the supervisor wants to reach out to anyone, that would be up to her.
Okay.
Yep. I usually don't get into discussions about appointments with people.
Mr. Hendrickson.
So I don't know many of the names on here, but I do recognize the supervisor for Lansing Township, Maggie Sanders, is their representative. And DeAndre Hayes, who was supervisor and on the board of Lansing Township before that, also was their representative back in 2018. I think it is helpful to have someone who is actually a consumer at BWL on there. I don't know if there's anyone on the board who fits that description, but certainly I think we should prioritize someone who is a consumer of that going forward.
Okay. Mr. Walsh.
Yeah, I'm recalling my conversation with Calvin Jones of last week. There's been a lot going on. But I recall when he actually provided me some names, of suggested names, and none of them lived in the area. So yeah, it is true that you do not have to live in the service area.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So, now that we understand that, we can move on to item 14D. March 7, Village of Okemos Community Conversation. You need to make a cancellation and change the date. Director Clark is going to.
Public Schools is calling to tell me my child's not going to school tomorrow. That's great already. Yes, I am here to introduce this discussion item. Last Friday, we received communication from the Village of Okemos development team. The lead developer funding person lives in California. They will not be able to make the March meeting. So I quickly went and found Manager Walsh, let him know what we're up against. The developer would like to have some internal discussions with staff as well. That's not the public portion, so we wanted to bring this back to the board because it's the board that set the March 7th meeting.
All right. Do you have an idea of, to offer when they might be
Alternate date?
an alternate date for them?
An alternate date, post March 7th or post March 7th, I think would work for the developer in any case. I know that they would like to meet with staff. That's for us to decide. I think there were a few members of the public that would also like this public discussion about the project to be separate from a board meeting. So if that was the case, then the board would pick any other day.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you, Madam Supervisor. I know do we have to cancel it since we've already notified the public? Can we have an informational meeting, take questions that we take back to the developers at a future meeting date, or is that
You set the meeting, it's your decision.
I think the point was for the developer to tell the public who was raising all the questions.
Yeah.
Their answers to the questions.
So that's not something anyone else on this board is interested in? They're like, hell no. Let's have a meeting, let's not have it.
That's not the case, but just Mr. DeShane.
I agree with you entirely, Supervisor. We do not want to be the spokespersons for this.
For the developer.
No, the developer needs to be here and answer to the public. And this meeting was the brainchild of Trustee Wilson because we're getting so much feedback on next door as to what's going on. Why is the township dragging its feet in this? Why are they so inept about redeveloping downtown Okemos? As if we owned the property, it was up to us to sign the building permits or the construction agreements. This is not our project. This is the developer's project. We want them to speak for this project. I do think we should suggest an alternative date for this and give them another 2 weeks or so to meet. And I also like the idea of being outside of the township board meeting, so we're not time limited by 60 minutes for this.
Okay, so Trustee Wilson.
I totally agree that the public doesn't deserve to hear from us and doesn't want to hear from us. They want to hear from the developer. So I would suggest that we go back to the developer and get some dates when they are available, that they will commit to, because this is so frustrating for us and all of our residents to be left hanging again without having any kind of communication.
Mr. DeShane. Your suggestion was a later date than March the 7th and a non-meeting date.
Correct.
Pick one. And let's offer
It depends on when they kick.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they'll tell us.
How about if we offer March 28th?
Okay.
It's an off meeting night. We'll go back to them and say this is
Tuesday
it.
night?
Yes.
And it would be the only topic.
Yes, that's the point of the meeting.
Okay.
All right.
Can do. I will ask about the
Thank
28th.
you.
You're welcome.
We would appreciate that. We now come to item 16, comments from the public. Are there members of the public left to comment? Seeing none, are there other matters and board member comments? Then we stand adjourned.
We have to have a motion.
Do I have to have a motion?
Yes.
Can I get a motion to adjourn?
I'll second.
All right. All in favor of the motion to adjourn, please say yes.
Yes.
Opposed, no. We are adjourned.